prosecute or recommend prosecution for her. So thanks for watching. I'm going to show you the video now.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Ratcliffe, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, did you make the decision not to recommend criminal charges relating to classified information before or after Hillary Clinton was interviewed by the FBI on July the 2nd?
After.
Okay, then I'm going to need your help in trying to understand how that's possible. I think there's a lot of prosecutors or former prosecutors that are shaking our heads in how that could be the case. Because if there was ever any real possibility that Hillary Clinton might be charged for something that she admitted to on July the 2nd, why would two of the central witnesses in a potential prosecution against her be allowed to sit in the same room to hear the testimony? Now, I've heard your earlier answers today. You said that, well, it was because the interview was voluntary and they were her lawyers. But I think you're skirting the real issue there, Director. First of all, the fact that it was voluntary, it didn't have to be, right? You could have impaneled an investigative grand jury. She could have been subpoenaed. And I know you've said that you can't comment on that. And I don't really care about the decision about whether or not there should have been a grand jury here. But since you didn't have one, it goes to the issue at hand about whether or not this interview should have ever taken place. With due respect to the answers that you've given, the FBI and the Department of Justice absolutely control whether or not an interview is going to take place with other witnesses in the room, because the simple truth is that under the circumstances as you've described, those interviews never take place. If there was ever any possibility that something Hillary Clinton might have said on July 2nd could have possibly resulted in criminal charges that might possibly resulted in a trial against her relating to this classified information, well, then, to use your words, Director, I don't think that there's any reasonable prosecutor out there who would have allowed two immunized witnesses central to the prosecution to proving the case against her to sit in the room.
Were actually people that belonged to the FSB, which is the former KGB. These are they're CIA, right? Russia's CIA. So these were people that were connected, and they received $500,000, and Bill Clinton specifically for a speech, $200,000 from a speech.
By the way, that speech came from a Russian government. The $500,000, which was twice his normal speaking fee, and what came from a Russian government-aligned investment bank, and it came at a time that seems suspicious, and especially in terms of the Uranium One deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the hearing, Grassley held a hearing this year that focused in on this bank, and this is a statement from one of the officials, and as noted by Grassley in the letter that he sent to all of these people who have put these lawsuits against President Trump. He said, well, if you just look at this bank alone, Renaissance is a Russian investment bank whose senior officers include former FSB Russian intelligence personnel. As such, sources have described the bank as an extension of the Russian government, as most all of the banks in Russia are controlled in some manner by the Kremlin. Yet, mum's the word, nobody made a big deal about the fact that, former President Bill Clinton received $500,000 for a speaking engagement from these folks, and it was filed in a joint income tax return while she was Secretary of State. That should raise concern.
Well, look at Qatar. I mean, they donated $1 million to the Clinton Foundation on Bill Clinton's birthday while Clinton was Secretary of State. Hillary, the nation, was the recipient of approximately, $4.3 billion. And, here's the thing that really bothered me is, the Saudis gave $10 million, and that was a 97% increase, et cetera, of money that they had given in the past when she becomes Secretary of State. And, okay, and she's the champion of women's rights and gays' rights and religious freedom, but look at how the Saudis persecute women and persecute and kill gays and lesbians and persecute Christians and Jews. So it's great hypocrisy, but it's probably a lot deeper.
True. And remember, there was a lot of concern, too. You mean Saudi Arabia, the majority of the 9/11, if we go back all the way to September 11th, 2001, they were from Saudi Arabia. Osama bin Laden was from Saudi Arabia. We know that there were a lot of issues in the kingdom with Wahhabism, which was the extreme form of Islamic belief. And so there were a lot of concerns there, and nobody really addressed those issues. We know we've been partnering with our Saudi partners and allies as well, trying to find a a way to mitigate this, but we haven't been able to. If you just go back to Qatar really quickly, I mean, think about this. During that time, she got the $1 million for the Clinton Foundation on Clinton's birthday. They got eventually $4.3 billion worth of sales. They were the recipient of that. That was a 1,482% increase.
Wow.
Since prior to Clinton being Secretary of State. That's huge. So if you just look at everything and you line it up, Sean, I mean, there's a lot of questions there, and people need answers. Like you said, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people seeking out these answers right now, but we know Senator Grassley is one of them, and he is expecting to receive some responses to his letters from those that he sent them to.
All right. Well,
aides were even interviewed. Comey contradicted these transcripts when he stated during sworn testimony before the House Judiciary Committee on September 28, 2016, that he made the decision not to recommend criminal charges for Secretary Clinton after she was interviewed by the FBI on July 2, 2016. Director Comey, in the final draft of his statement, allowed FBI agent Peter Strzok to replace grossly negligent, which is legally punishable under federal law, with extremely careless, which is not legally punishable under federal law. Federal law states gross negligence in handling the nation's intelligence can be punished criminally with prison time or fines. There's also the June 27, 2016 infamous meeting between A.G. Lynch and former President Bill Clinton aboard her plane on the tarmac in Phoenix, Arizona. Immediately thereafter, Hillary Clinton was exonerated.
From the Justice Department and from Sessions' Chief of Staff, that's very important. He, in effect, is Rosenstein and Mueller's boss. The other pressure comes from the Congress. Congress has now 3 times subpoenaed FBI records of their contacts and dealings with Christopher Steele in the preparation of the dossier. And the FBI has refused to turn over those documents. And the committee, the Judiciary Committee, House Judiciary, is now launching its own investigation of that subject and of Comey's involvement with the dossier and of Comey's meetings with Loretta Lynch, Clinton's meetings with Loretta Lynch and her involvement in the process of it.
And also, let's not forget, Mueller and Comey go back years. They have been pals a long time. He needs to recuse himself. And, you know, another thing, who ever heard of 17 lawyers on one case? This is unheard of. This is a pure in search of a crime. And they're off in the weeds on Manafort's dealing from 2006? Who are they kidding?
Investigating Hillary's emails. These are all crucial topics that begin to shift the investigation from Trump to the Obama people, and from the issue of collusion to the issue of fabricating this dossier and perhaps using it as evidence to get FISA warrants to monitor and wiretap people like Manafort and others on the Trump staff.
Exactly. And this is why their heads are exploding.
So this is a crucial development. It really is the beginning of the folding back of this investigation on itself. And I really hope it continues.